Firstly, guys, thanks for coming out on, Thursday night. Thanks to Kerr for putting on the event, and Bicycle Network as well. I know I've thoroughly enjoyed sitting here and listening to these three blokes beside me, hearing their story. And tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story, how I've come in contact with mental health issues and friends with those, and then how my moustache has ended up working at the place that I like to call the hairy factory. It's a bit like these pillows, to be honest. It's strange. My involvement with Movember started with, as most blokes probably do, tried to grow a moustache literally to take the piss out of my mates. To think that growing a moustache could end up with me sitting here talking about Movember, I wouldn't have thought it was possible. 2008, as I said, a group of friends and I started growing moustaches. We were not long out of high school, probably not long finished puberty either, and wanted to see if we could grow moustaches and literally hang shit on each other. We didn't know what Movember was. We certainly didn't fundraise for Movember, and we didn't register. I'd probably get shot now saying that. But Movember for me got serious in 2009. I was working overseas at a summer camp in America. I was working on a waterfront teaching kids how to wakeboard and swim. I was there for 3 months. I got to walk around in flip-flops and board shorts, and I remember thinking at the time, like, how good is life? This is something that's amazing, and this is what it should be about, right? I'm in my 20s. I've got a tan. This is great. I've got an Australian accent in a foreign country. Those that have travelled would know it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing, most of the times it's good. And I came home to my small country town, and I'm from a small town of Stawell. I'm sure some of you guys have probably ridden into Grampians. It's not far from there. And I came home, and 2 weeks from landing, I was meant to be moving in with one of my best friends. And I remember I hadn't caught up with him yet. And I was working at the time at Woolworths, and he came in to buy a packet of darts. Not the candy darts, he didn't mind a cigarette, which probably isn't the best theme for men's health. But I remember him coming in, a larger-than-life character, and bit of a chat. He said to me, oh, how was your trip? Yep, pretty good. What have you been up to? Not much, usual. Yeah, cool. When are we catching up? Oh, a few days. How does that sound? Yeah, good, no worries. Now, one thing we never said to each other was goodbye, and he said to me, goodbye. And at the time, I didn't really think much about it. So the shift continues, and I'm plugging away, I'm stacking fucking milk on a shelf, and 2 friends come in, and they're quite upset. Both girls are crying, and they said, oh, have you heard about Mark? And coming from a small country town, we don't really use people's first names, so Mark was Watto to me. And I was thinking, Mark, who's Mark? Oh, Mark. Should I know this person? Why don't I know this person? And I said, oh, Watto? Are you talking about Watto? They're like, yeah, have you heard about Mark? And I said, no, I wouldn't know. What do you mean? I'm like, I saw him 2 hours ago. And they said to me, he's taken his life. And I remember standing there in the supermarket thinking, what is going on? Had never experienced death outside of my family that was a grandparent. Certainly never experienced death of somebody that was my age or knew somebody that was my age that had died, and certainly didn't know what suicide was, what depression was, or what anxiety was. And being 2009, these conversations about masculinity and reducing stigma weren't there. One thing that I didn't know at the time, that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 45 years of age. Part of that reason is social isolation, and it's the reluctance to talk about, our feelings and our emotions. And from research that Movember has done, and one of those things is the networks that surround guys don't know how to ask those questions and aren't checking in regularly enough as to say, how are you going, what's going on in your life, and asking a question that actually matters and isn't skimming the top. So 2009 is where the moustache, for me and my group of mates, became this thing that we were going to rally around to honour one of our friends. And we started fundraising. We registered, and we raised a few bucks, and we did a few little running events to try to raise some funds. And fast forward to 2012, 3 years down the track, we were fundraising, not really having an impact, or not really talking to the community about what we were doing. And it's 2012. I'm sitting on the couch with my girlfriend at the time. It was a Sunday night, and we're watching 60 Minutes. Like, I'm 23 years old. What am I doing on a Sunday night watching 60 Minutes? Like, that's something that your parents do. And I remember getting up to check my phone, and I went over to my phone and I looked at it, and I had 48 missed calls. I'm thinking, 48 missed calls, and I start looking through it, and it's all my mates, it's all the boys. I'm thinking, geez, this is grim. I'm sitting on a couch watching 60 Minutes in my pajamas. My mates are slamming me with calls and messages. Clearly they're out on the gas and they want me to go with them. I open up my text messages, and one of my friends has a text message in there, and he goes, mate, call me. Next message down, call me ASAP. Call me now. And I'm thinking, I've got a rubber arm at times. I get, you know, if someone's out having a beer and having a good time, I want to be a part of that. And I was thinking, shit, how am I going to get this past my girlfriend on the couch? I'm currently in my pajamas. I'm doing the maths in my head, like, how long is it going to be until I can get ready and I can meet the boys? Then the next message says, if you can't reply, check your fucking voice messages. I'm thinking, geez, they're aggressive, these blokes. Geez, they want me out. And I call and I get these voice messages from one of my friends, Lee. And Lee says to me, you need to call me. Liam's taken his life. And here I was, having lost 2 mates in 3 years, standing, looking at my phone, thinking, how the fuck is this still happening? How are blokes, one my age, taking their lives, and why are they doing that? I remember the next day, we jumped in the car, a group of friends and I. We went down to see Liam's partner. Liam had a partner. He had a little daughter whose second birthday was 2 days, 2 days after Liam took his life. So we're down and we're sitting in this backyard, and I was holding Liam's daughter. She was on my lap, and she's flicking through this iPhone, and she's flicking through photos, and we're all sitting in the backyard, really not sure what to say. You know, how do you say to Liam's partner that we miss her partner when this is her partner, this is the father of her child? And little Layla's skimming through on this phone, and she stops, and it's this photo of Liam. And she goes, Dad, where's Dad? And thank Christ, me and my mates all had sunglasses on, because every single one of us was crying our eyes out. We weren't making a sound, we were just simply crying. And Belinda walked over, like the rock star that she is and continues to be, and she picked Layla up and she said, Dad's in heaven. That's where Dad is. And you know, one thing we didn't know back then is that when there's major milestones in people's lives now, whether that's having a child, whether it's buying a house, whether it's changing a job or a relationship breakdown, that these are the times in people's lives where risky situations can happen, when people start to doubt some things. And I remember we were walking out of Belinda's house after seeing Layla, and I turned to my mates and I said to them, shit boys, we better stick together here. This friendship group that we've got, it's got to get fucking tighter, because we can't have another mate take his life because he doesn't feel comfortable talking to us. This is bullshit. So from there, we have this connection, you know, this social connection that is super strong, that we can talk to each other about anything. And we ask those questions of, you know, what's going on in your life? Why are you feeling like this? But that certainly wasn't easy to get to that stage. And I think the thing that helped us was, stupidly, when we were walking down that driveway, I looked to one of my friends, country bloke, about 110 kilos, full forward, loves his footy. I've never been a big bloke, and certainly you can see that when I'm standing next to these boys. I was standing next to Josh earlier, and I was like, yeah, g'day mate, how are you? Yeah, hi. And I said to my mates, I said, you know what, let's do something to really kickstart a conversation here. Let's get people talking in our hometown. And they're like, great, what are we going to do? I'm like, we're going to go out to schools, we're going to talk to kids at school, we're going to talk to blokes at the footy club, we're going to talk to RSLs. What are we going to talk about? Looking back, shit, we were just getting blokes to try to talk to each other. There was no science behind it. You know, one of the boys said a comment, there's like, oh yeah, my mum bloody catches up with her mates all the time. And I was like, right boys, that's what we're going to do, just get guys talking. And then how we were really going to kickstart that conversation was, I said to them I wanted to run 100 kilometres. I got a track and field background, got sick of running around a track, wanted to run 100 kilometres, but never really had the motivation to do it. And I thought, right, this is it. Here's the motivation to do it. And the idea behind running 100K is if there was a guy that was going through, say, another round of chemotherapy, or there was a bloke that was having a tough time or was having a bit of a rough trot, that didn't feel like he could get out of bed or felt like he was struggling, if he could see a so-called fit bloke put himself through, say, a 100-kilometre run to raise one, awareness and a few bucks for the Movember Foundation, then we'd done our job. And I touched on social networks and connections and mates. I had 12 friends that joined me on this journey. None of them are runners, but they all were there for me in my time of need, and certainly my moment of crisis. There was times where the wheels certainly came off running 100Ks. I'd never run over 30 kilometres before. Didn't really train for it, was too busy trying to fundraise. Didn't really know much about nutrition. I think I sucked down like 40 gels. Read, I was clogged up for a while. Can't drink yellow Gatorade because I just sucked on Gatorade. I did everything wrong basically. Ran on the road in a pair of minimalist shoes. It was like barefoot. I had read this book, Born to Run. They're like, oh, run barefoot. It's super efficient. It's not. It's not. My feet were covered in blisters, and one of the worst things on that whole journey in that run was the roadkill. It's all right when you're on bikes, like you fly past or in your car, you smell it, you're like, oh, that's bad. When you're running, you smell it like 3K beforehand, you smell it bloody 3K afterwards, and it's horrific. And I remember when we were getting closer to town, and there's not a lot that happens in Stall. So the idea of this guy running 100 kilometres, and we were going to finish it at this local harness racing event. Half the town bloody came out for it, which was amazing. The thing that got me was how emotional doing an endurance event you get. And Jesse touched on the conversations that you have with yourself. I found myself having conversations with my friend that I never had, and conversations with them that I did have. And I remember as we were getting closer to the finish line, there was people out there, supporting us. And one of my mates, my big mate, the full forward, puts his arm around me and he goes, fuck mate, you better start running. By this stage, it was like 5K to go. I was walking, I was shot. It wasn't pretty. And I decided to do it. I also read somewhere that if you wore white, it was good to like reflect the sunlight. So in these fucking 2XU, white bike shorts, black undies on, white singlet. I'm sweaty as hell. There's not much to see. There certainly wasn't much to see on that day. And I'm walking in, I look at my mate and I'm like, run? What are you talking about? He's like, mate, you told everyone you were going to run. Thinking, fuck, I can't run. And then I said to him, like, you know what? This is great. This is what it's about. I want people to see that I'm broken, because I'm broken and I'm still having a go. I'm not moving very fast, but I'm getting there, and I'm getting there with the support of all of you pricks around me that are trying to get me to run. And I remember when we were leaving the event, the idea was to get, one, people talking, and for people to have conversations, one, about mental health, and two, about the stigma around it. And if we could get one bloke to put his hand up, regardless of the funds that we raised, to say, you know what, I just need help. I'm not having a good time. That was the aim, that was the mission. And I'm walking to the car, and my dad was in this support vehicle, and he was getting stuck in. He's like, mate, you drive a manual. Do you know how hard it is to change gears, to follow you for 12 hours while you're running? I'm on the clutch, I'm off the clutch, I'm on the clutch, I'm off the clutch. I reckon I've got a blister. Thinking, mate, you've got a blister. And he puts his arm around me, and Dad's not very tall. Basically, it's me standing next to Josh. Like, he's the short one in the relationship. So I've got my arm around him, he's got his arm around my waist. And he looks at me and he goes, thank you. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I look at him, I go, what for? Like, what are you thanking me for? Half annoyed that I'm looking like an idiot. I've now realised that everyone's looking at me. One, I need a shower. Two, I'm hungry. I need a poo. Probably won't be able to poo. Haven't weed for a while. Hydration was shot. Dad, why are we stopping here? And he goes, mate, thank you. I'm like, why? And he goes, I've only ever told your mother this, but I want you to know that when I was your age, I battled depression. He's like, and to be honest, mate, I still battle it. And you know what? It's bloody hard. And some days, when you were younger, I would yell or I'd have an outburst or something. That's because I just didn't know how to deal with it. So I just want to let you know that I've got depression and yeah, thanks for running. I was like, righto, Dad, where do we go from here? And once again, you're emotional, you've just exerted yourself for a while. I start howling, Dad's like, Jesus, mate, do it in the car, will you? Do it in the car, people are watching. I get in the car and I say to Dad, I'm like, fucking hell. I'm like, we've been growing these moustaches for the last 3 years. You know, we've been talking about blokes and mental health and we've been talking about reducing this stigma. And I'm like, you're only telling me now. And he goes, yeah, mate, it's just taken me a while to build the courage up to be able to have that conversation. And, you know, I look now at the relationship that I have with my dad, and it's one that I hope that I can have with my kids. And, you know, Dad said to me one day, he goes, mate, it's you and your mates that'll help this stigma reduction. It's you being able to have these conversations that you're having now out in the community. You know, we were fortunate enough from that run, one, to raise awareness for Movember. We raised a bit over 26 grand. Movember picked the phone up, reached out and basically said, thank you, love what you're doing, let us know if you're ever doing anything else like this again. From there, I built an amazing relationship with them that has landed me here, talking to you guys about moustaches. My link, Danny at the start said, you know, the Panadol cyclist. I felt like a bit of a phony, to be honest, sitting up here in a room of cyclists in a bike shop. Movember has been amazing for me for numerous different reasons, and one of those things that I'm grateful for is Movember got me into cycling. My first year at Movember, I was working in the community space, and I got chucked to cycling events to go and support. And if people were fundraising from cycling, Kieran, you were the guy to get out there and meet the guys. So one of the first events I ever went to was the Giro della Donna. Went out there, supported on the side of the road, was pushing blokes like on their bikes up the hills, was even like weirdly dropping lollies into people's mouths that were like tired. But it always had like this love relationship with like the Tour de France. Used to watch it, used to love it. Went to a few more cycling events, and then we've got some keen cyclists in the office, and I was like, oh geez, I'm keen for a bike, I'm into this, you know, this is all right, these blokes look pretty flash, gear looks schmick, Lycra, oh, I've already worn Lycra that's white, this isn't strange for me, I could do this. And it was from Movember that I got into cycling, and it was a few years ago, you know, you get caught up working at the hairy factory, doing your job, and I felt bad that personally, I hadn't done any fundraising leading into a Movember campaign. And Cyril, who's sitting in here, keen rider, bloke that I look up to. I remember on Instant Messenger, I sent him a message. I'd not long had my bike ride. I'd never ridden over 100K. And I think the first couple of months that I was riding my bike, I just didn't even ride with a pump or a spare tube. I didn't know you need to change a tyre or pump a tyre if you got a flat. And I sent Cyril a message. I'm like, hey, mate, how many, what's the sort of training if I want to ride, you know, like 200, 300K? He goes, oh, probably 6 months. I'm like, Ripper, we got 2 weeks. He's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, I've got an idea. And Cyril flies down these set of stairs. He says to me, he's like, righto, kids, what are we doing? I'm like, well, mate, I want to ride to Stawell. I want to ride from Melbourne to Stawell, and I want to stop at one of my mate's graves just to, you know, pay my respects to him and, you know, raise a few bucks and have a conversation, you know, about mental health. Cyril marked out this map and I said, mate, it's awesome, it looks good. We don't go through the town where my mate's buried. Like, we need to go through there. He goes, well, Kiz, it's going to add another 100K to the trip, mate. I'm like, what are we sitting at? And he's like, 330. I'm like, great, we've got a week to go. He goes, have you ridden over 100K yet? I'm like, nah, done about 70. And this is where I think, you know, cycling is beautiful for it. Jesse touched on it earlier and we can all associate with it. It's a level playing field, right? It's a community that I wanted to be a part of. I stopped looking at the blokes sipping lattes in Lycra as like, oh, what are these dudes doing? To, whoa, I want to be a part of that community. I want to be able to jump on a bike and have a shoulder-to-shoulder conversation with people about the real shit in life. You know, we tend to skip over and skim over the surface of a lot of issues and skim over serious conversations, and it's the bike that has helped enable me to have conversations. Cyril and I certainly had some serious conversations over the course of 14 hours on this bike. I think half the conversation was how dead my ass was. Couldn't feel it. But the reason we were doing it was for a good cause, and it helped us have a greater conversation with each other and to form a bond, which cyclists do. You talk about going for a group ride. We're out with a group of mates that come from all different walks of life. It doesn't matter what you do 9 to 5. What matters is, one, how you perform on the bike and the conversations that you're having on the bike. If I could wrap up, I guess with a parting message would be, have a conversation that matters. There might be a bloke that you see daily and you just simply say, hey, how you going? And he says, yeah, good. And you go your separate way. Or you might have a conversation with someone that you're like, how you going? And he goes, oh, pretty shit. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's fucking rough. And you walk away. Well, stop, take the time to ask a second question or a third question and dive into, why someone might not be feeling tip-top, or just being there for someone when they need it, and having those conversations that count. That's my brief story on my moustache. I get to keep it for 364 days of the year. I take it off at the start of November or Movember. But thank you guys. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for listening. Cheers, mate.
Anyone have any questions?
It's good. We're all looking for the door. It's fine.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thanks,
I know it's probably not easy coming and chatting about losing your mates, losing loved ones, something. Yeah, Kieran, it's tough.
Yeah, mate.
Why do guys not talk about this sort of stuff?
Yeah.
It's like, why did it take your dad 3 years to do it?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest, I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's this idea of being a bloke, what it means to be a bloke. Typically to be a bloke, you're the breadwinner for the family, you're stoic, you're the rock of the family, you don't show emotion. I think that has helped shape why men have difficulty having these conversations. And you know what? Sometimes you feel vulnerable having those serious conversations, and cycling gives you that ability to have a vulnerable conversation when you're already spent. You're showing yourself physically that you're vulnerable being on the bike, and then that can lead to having a conversation that matters. Why are blokes shit at having conversations? Probably because we are looking up to our fathers, we're looking up to the generations beforehand, and we're still living off what the stereotype is. My opinion and that opinion of Movember is fuck that. Why should we? Why should we live up to an expectation that our fathers have lived to, and that expectation, that way of life isn't helping, right? There's 8 suicides that happen daily and 6 of them are blokes. So something in that old way of thinking isn't right. And I guess that's something that falls on our shoulders. It's our responsibility to start having those conversations. It took my dad 53 years to be able to have that conversation with my mum and me. Fingers crossed everyone leaves tonight being able to have that conversation. And fingers crossed everyone leaves tonight being able to hold a conversation with their mates when they do open up. It's the only way we're going to get better at it is by talking, and it is by being vulnerable at times. Yeah. Hopefully that sort of answers it. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers tonight, and thank you to everyone here for coming along. Hopefully by coming here and listening to these stories and conversations, you can take something away and continue the conversation at home with your mates, with your family. When we started this event, we didn't know what to expect. We thought we might get 5 people in a room, and that'd be great. If we could help one person, that'd be awesome. So we're really appreciative that so many of you have given up your time tonight and come to listen to a few stories. So thank you very much. If you want to reconnect with us next Thursday morning, Bunch Ride happening again here, 6:30 a.m. So come and have a chat if you like. Otherwise, thanks to Kerr for having us. Thank you, Sarah, for the food.